Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Scandinavia House. My name is Stefan Liebich. I'm the director of the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung New York office. And the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung and Jacobin are hosting this event. I will first introduce our guests. Then I say a few words about our organization, and then I will hand over to our moderator. Our guest of honor today is Sofia Leonidakis. Sofia is a leader of our party Die Linke in Germany. She was elected to the Bremen State Parliament in 2015, and she's a chairwoman of the group of Die Linke in the Bremen State Parliament since 2019. Maybe it's interesting to know that our party Die Linke is governing the state of Bremen together with the Social Democratic Party and the Green Party. And we are very happy and honored that Sofia came the long way over the ocean to discuss the German election with us. So welcome, Sofia. And then I want to introduce Bhaskar Sunkara. Bhaskar Sunkara is, of course, the founder of the Jacobin magazine and now the president of The Nation. We are really happy to have you here and thank you for the cooperation. And my name is Stefan Liebich. I'm the director, but I used to be a member of the German parliament from 2009 to 2021. So I will switch roles immediately, not being the director host, but being one of the panelists. The Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung is one of the 6 taxpayer-funded foundations in Germany that are associated with German political parties. So we have a law in Germany that every political party that is elected 3 times into the German parliament gets taxpayer money to do educational work and political education. And our foundation, it's called foundation, but we don't have private money, it's taxpayer money, is connected to the party, obviously, Die Linke, the left in Germany. Also, I want to introduce, sorry, I forgot you, David Williams. Dr. David Williams works in the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung as our director for climate justice, but today he was nice enough to be here and help us a little bit if we are stuck with our English. So thank you for this, David. And with this, I hand it over to Bhaskar, and I hope we're going to have an interesting evening.
It's a very particular European thing to be completely fluent in English and then to constantly apologize for your English. I'm normally very loud, but let me see. Is this mic on? Okay, good. I guess I'll modulate a little more. But I think it might be useful to start with just a little bit of background. So I assume that if you are coming to a Jacobin Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung sponsored event right after work at 6 p.m., you're probably familiar enough with German politics or with the topic at hand. So I'm going to assume a fair amount of knowledge. But I think to start with, it might be useful for you to very quickly lay out the landscape of German politics, just so we quickly know the 5 parties that have entered a parliament, just broadly where they are in the political spectrum. And also, I know this is a tall task, but very briefly describe the, what Die Linke represents as a political force that's distinct from social democracy in Germany.
Sure. I will just go through the election results. So the election last Sunday was won by the CDU-CSU. This is a Christian Democratic Union with their Bavarian sister party, CSU. This is, I would say, a center-right party. Some people would say a conservative party. This party got, on one hand, their second worst result in German history. But on the other hand, they did win the election with 28% of the votes. This party was followed, unfortunately, by the so-called Alternative for Germany, AfD. This is a right-wing, a far right-wing, some people would say a fascist party in Germany. Unfortunately, this party has doubled their votes and they got 20% of the votes and came in second. The third is a party that has right now the Chancellor, the Social Democratic Party of Germany, which is the oldest party in Germany. They only got 16% of the votes, which is their worst result in their history. And then the Green Party with 11% of the votes, which is also a loss, not as much as the Social Democrats suffered, but it's also enough that their top candidate decided to step down and not be in politics anymore. And then that was a big surprise, the Left Party. We came in with 8.8%. That was a number that no one really expected, so a big surprise for us. I will say something about the party later. And then, this is really for nerds. There's one person elected from the SSW. It's the Südschleswischer Wählerverband. We have an extra law for a Danish minority. They don't have to get the 5%, so that's why they got one seat to be represented in the parliament. Those are all parties that are in the parliament right now. The pro-business Free Democratic Party was voted out of the parliament. They used to be part of the last government. They used to have the finance minister of Germany. They are out. And then there was a personality project called BSW that we don't have to talk about. And then, I mean, we can if you're interested in. Okay. The history of our party is quite interesting, and I try to make it not too long. But somehow it's connected to this place here, because you may know that at this area here in New York used to be the permanent mission of the German Democratic Republic to the United Nations. So the backstory of the party, Die Linke, the left, started in the GDR. The Communist Party of the GDR, it was called Socialist Unity Party, SED, was transformed into the Party of Democratic Socialism. During this transformation, this party has lost 90% of their members and became a totally different party, so from 2 million members to 100,000 then. And the PDS was very strong in the East, very weak in the West, got around 5% in the federal elections, but went down in a crisis. And there was a moment when a split off of the Social Democratic Party, led by their former chairman Oskar Lafontaine, and our party, the PDS, organized a merger, and in 2009 the party Die Linke, the left, was founded. The party Die Linke already, even if it was not founded, did run the first time 2005 to the German Bundestag. We got 8%, then even 12%. Then 8%, then 9%, and in the last election before this Sunday, terrible defeat, not even 5%. And a few weeks ago, if you would have asked me, I was not sure if Die Linke would even come back in the German Bundestag, and that we are now back at 8.8% is really great, and we will talk about why.
So, yeah, a few weeks ago, I feel like most of my discussion with my German friends was whether or not Die Linke would be able to get, through direct election, maybe 3 MPs or 4 members of parliament. But there was a pretty stunning turnaround in the polls. And again, it's all relative. We're on the socialist left. So for us, 9% in 2025 with the rising forces of the far right abound is kind of like our version of the Petrograd Soviet or something. But we all have to put it into context. But the result from kind of polling around 3% to polling around 9%, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the campaign that was run, and in your experience, as someone who was involved in the campaigning, what was the sort of messages that you feel like were resonating with ordinary voters that decided to support Die Linke, even if in the past they wouldn't have considered voting for the left?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming here and having interest into these German elections, which were like a really success for the left. No one was expecting this even 1 month before. We were in the polls like around 3% in like many polls, and in the European election, which was the election before, we were in 2.7%, which is like almost not existing anymore. Like in the polls, we weren't even shown as an own party. We were like among different parties, we were mixed together. So we were not visible anymore in the political landscape. You could say that. So we were not a political force anymore, and it was. It had different reasons. One is that we were for years fighting among each other as a left. We had this party member Sarah Wagenknecht, who left our party last year, year before last year, like 1.5 years ago. And she, for years, destroyed the left party from inside, because we had this fight always. She always had different positions, other positions than the democratic, elected opinion of our party. She always opposed that democratically elected positions. And she became strong with that, like opposing us. And she's very famous. She's one of the most famous politicians in Germany. So she made a great damage to our party, and only in favor for herself, because this was a receipt of her success and of becoming even more famous. So we had years of interior fights in the left party. And after she left our party, I myself and some other comrades, we also made an application to throw her out. But before that, she left our party to found her own party. After that many years of fight, I think many of our party members were tired of fighting with each other. So we had a huge thirst of harmony and behave friendly with each other, solidarity in the party, have a different culture. So we lost a lot of members. We were only 50,000 in Germany. We lost many members, and in some areas we lost half of our party members. In my area in Bremen, we didn't lose many members, only a little, very few. But in some areas it was we lost really a huge part of our structure, or people who were a strong element in the in the party structures. So it was a problem for us. But this thirst of harmony, I think, is the base of our success, because we had a new strategy, which was a bit more populistic, more worker, being more worker party, making simple messages, making a simple communication which you could understand easily, and also a lot of other elements, like social media work was intensified a lot, 10 times more than before. There was a great investment into social media work. But I think the core element is that we worked together. We didn't fight in publicity. We didn't, our famous members didn't oppose to each other, but we were one voice. And then the Bundesregierung, the government, broke down. So then we had to make an election campaign within 1 month. But before, it was prepared with a new strategy of being more having these simple messages. So the base was there on the base of having another political culture in the party itself, among ourselves, and also on the strategic base. There was these two bases were ready. So then we could do that election campaign. And in that election campaign also there were different elements of going on the doors, knocking on the doors of the voters, of the people. So we knocked on more than 600,000 doors in Germany, which is a very huge amount. And the message was, we are not talking and promising, but we have a clear answer to social issues and to social security, to more social justice. And we listen to the problem of the people. That was the first step we did. So this was also a very strong element of our election campaign, to go to the people, to talk to them, and listen to them also.
So I think it might be worth bringing up the specter of de-alignment in Germany, or the loss of traditional working class support for parties of the left. And Germany, in many ways, was home to the first truly mass party of workers. The SPD was, the most important party of the Second International, the most important party of the European workers' movement in the 19th century, and it was kind of the party that created, outside of Britain, kind of created democracy modern democracy in Europe. It helped create the model that created universal suffrage in Europe and created all these other avenues for various forms of working class advance. So when we talk about the loss of certain strongholds of European social democracy, we're talking about something even much more significant than the Democratic Party, let's say, losing places that voted blue for 30, 40 years, which of course is also significant, but places that voted along class lines for 140 years. And so I think what I'm getting at is if you could just discuss broadly what's happening in particular to the SPD and also to Die Linke. So with Die Linke, I guess the loss of traditional Die Linke voters in the East, even if they are being largely replaced by, and please let me know if I'm mischaracterizing the demographics of the party, but it seems to be being replaced with both working class voters from immigrant backgrounds in certain cities in Germany, but also students, younger workers. The party did quite well among young people, defectors from parties like the Greens. So you kind of have this shift in Die Linke's base from east to west. And in the case of the SPD, it's less a shift or a change in coalition, so much of just a loss with no replacement for those workers. And I think I'm also a critic of BSW, but I think to give the best faith interpretation of what the initial attempt was, it was an attempt to say we are radically losing a whole layer of working class people in the East, and we need to meet them where they are. But I think whereas Die Linke tried to meet workers with demands around rent and the social welfare state and these other questions while remaining principled on immigration, I think BSW kind of had less of a, maybe had less faith in the capacity of ordinary Germans to vote for, on these economic issues without kind of pandering to certain social conservative elements. So that's a big question, but I'm wondering if you could discuss more the SPD and Die Linke and the changing composition of these parties.
Yeah, and as so often, these two stories, Die Linke and the Social Democratic story, are connected. So the Social Democratic Party in West Germany was the party of the workers. And sometimes people look back a little bit nostalgic to the time when the SPD was the party of the workers. But you have to look of a certain kind of representation of workers. In West Germany, we had a very low rate of women working. It was very often male workers. So this is not a model we are looking for right now. Then also this West German model was based on a thing that they called, and it's really nasty, guest workers. So Germany invited people from Turkey and Italy and Greece and other countries with the crazy idea that they would come work and then go home. And when they didn't and had families, it was somehow not what some people in Germany wanted. So this model, this old West German model, actually is nothing I want to go back to. But that was also a fight that we had in our party with these people who are now in the BSW. Because there was some kind of nostalgia. Because what they realized is that when Tony Blair started with his New Labour and Gerhard Schröder, who was a social democratic chancellor, tried to copy him, they were like, we are no longer for workers at all. It's a bit like the Democrats here. We are looking for the service segment or whatever, and we just leave them behind. And this was a process that was so hard. They cut a lot of very important programs to support unemployed people, etc., that there was a huge disappointment with the Social Democratic Party. Out of this disappointment, the split was happening that formed together with the PDS, the new party, Die Linke. So the Social Democratic Party went down and down and down. And the problem is in our coalition system, sometimes Americans like our proportional voting system. And I get why, because you can vote for a certain political direction and not like the whole tent. The problem is after the election they form coalitions. And so the disappointment went on because the Social Democratic Party had to form coalitions, either with the CDU or in this case with the FDP. And also they have a somehow conservative part in their party on their own. So I think the result in this election is the ongoing process of workers and not so rich people of the feeling this party is no longer a party that thinks about me first or at all. So that is the problem of the SPD. If we talk about Die Linke, there's also a misconception. Sometimes I hear people saying, the Linke has to go back to the time when they used to be a workers' party. To be honest, the PDS, the Party of Democratic Socialism, was never a workers' party. They made politics for workers. They had good programs for workers. But our members and our voters, those were mostly people who were disappointed about the way of the reunification, people in East Germany, people who used to work for the GDR government, not like important people, like regular people working for the GDR government. The workers in the first free election voted for the CDU because they wanted to have the reunification. And there was only one moment right after the merge between the SPD split off and our party when we had a lot of support among unions and workers. But that was one short moment in our history. And then, you are right, a problem that exists among left parties, or a challenge, I don't want to describe it as a problem, among left parties all over the world is where to focus. Of course, we are in favor of feminism. We are in favor of supporting migrants. We are fighting for world peace, etc., etc. But the question is, how do we reach out to a majority in Germany to get the strength to do all these things? And I think that was a smart thing in this election. As Sofia mentioned, there was a focus to actually two messages: high housing prices, high food prices. And we talked about this all the time. And that is a message that resonates. The difference to the BSW is they not only they threw in the same moment minorities and disadvantaged people under the bus. They were not just focusing on like white workers. In the same moment, they were really officially against migrants. They voted together with the right wing, with the fascist AfD in the German Bundestag. They fought against LGBTQ people in Germany. And yeah, I think that is also a reason why they have lost, but I don't want to talk about them. I think our idea, not to give up minorities and disadvantaged people, fight for them, but focus in an election campaign to economic questions like high prices, I think that was somehow the key.
So I think it might be worth talking about this question of what it's like to be in government and still be part of a force that's nationally building its credibility among ordinary working people based on being an oppositional force. So I guess historically, at least from my first encounters with the German left, maybe 10, 15 years ago or so, there seemed to be always a very strong divide between, and again, this is a crass generalization, but between the people who are more electorally oriented and sought the credibility, especially coming out of the PDS experience of state power through seeking state governments, particularly in the East, and those activists who had more of an extra parliamentary focus, and there was always that tension. and I think we saw some disappointments with some of the various coalition governments that have been formed with Die Linke in the past. One reason that's credited for maybe the BSW not reaching their threshold was their participation very early on in a government in the East. So I'm wondering, as someone who's involved in both the complex task of trying to manage an existing capitalist state government in the interest of working people, how you manage kind of some of the compromises that you have to do since you're in coalition with maintaining this oppositional profile and telling people that indeed you are different than the SPD, you are different than a lot of these establishment parties that people are becoming very disenchanted with.
I will answer your question, but let me first add 2 more points for the discussion before, because we didn't mention them. One more reason for our success as being left is that we had good personnel. They are famous. They have millions of likes in social media, so they are really, like, people know them. And when they have an event, they even are waiting in a queue to talk to them. And they are coming from, like, they are traveling hundreds of kilometers and quitting their work to see our Heidi Reicheneck and Jan van Aken. So now they are really famous because they did this social media work and good media work. That was one reason. And the second reason I want to add, because we didn't mention, and then I will answer your question, is that there was one moment in Bundestag, just like 1.5 weeks before 2 weeks before the elections, that the Conservative Party brought a debate for an Antrag, application, like for was ist ein Plenarantrag? A bill. It was not a law, but it was they brought in a bill and brought it to debate, and they made a majority with the far right AfD, and they knew it before that they would get only a majority if they accept the votes of AfD, and they accepted the votes of AfD. So it was the first time that in the German Bundestag a bill was voted with a majority of far-right fascist AfD. And this was a really important moment, I think, before the election. It was maybe that crucial moment in the pre-election period, because our fraction was, like, Heidi Reicheneck, the leader of the group of the left in the Bundestag. She made a really angry speech, and she was opposing Friedrich Merz, the leader of the Conservative, like, really harsh. And the others were, like, kind of quiet and, like, sad. Their mood was not that angry, and that angriness really touched the people, because there were millions on the streets again after last year, when one media research group published that the far-right AfD, fascist AfD, is like planning to putsch and to, like, break the constitution of Germany while making plans to deport millions of people from Germany with foreign heritage, so like migrant people. So this was again mobilizing millions of people going on the streets against that coalition, like unholy coalition of the conservatives with the fascist AfDs. And we were on the right time, with the right person, on the right place, with the right position, touching the people. That was, like, I think, and after that our polls, like, went up, like, really, massively. So to answer your question, we are in Bremen governing since 2019, as Stefan said, and we have 2 ministries, the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Women and Health. So we I think we did really good work. During the corona pandemic, we were the federal state with the best vaccination quota because we did health policy with a social focus. Our health minister sent buses for vaccination buses into the poor areas to get all the people vaccinated because public health studies show that the more poor people are, the less mobile they are to go to doctor and health services. So that was social health policy at its best, and it was successful. And that is like one of our receipts, I think, how we make social policy or left politics on a federal level. And I think we are clear to not to govern just to govern, but we govern to make the lives of the people in the federal state of Bremen better. And as long as we can manage to do that, we will continue. And if we cannot proceed with the Social Democrats and the Greens, then we will quit that governing coalition in Bremen. So we never decided to do it, but I think our strategy is kind of like rebellisches Regieren, like rebellion governing, rebellious governing, which was one concept also from the left party in Berlin, which governed quite a lot of years successfully. And until now, we are proceeding. We have, like, also in housing, we do a lot of things, also for health politics, for equal rights for all genders. So we can proceed, and I think the General Party, which is more in opposition, they acknowledge that we can achieve things to make the lives better. And I think a left party should not always search for the contradictories among each other, like should we govern or should we not govern, which is the right way, making a religious question out of that, but we should question ourselves in which role can we be useful for the people. So I think being in opposition, the left party, like the general left party, was useful also because they developed an app where you could Mietrechner-App. Wie übersetzt man das?
See whether rent was being overcharged, whether they were paying too much for rent or not.
Yeah, you could see if your rent is too much according to law, and many people saw they are paying too much rent and they got thousands of euros back. So this was a real usefulness of left politics in opposition. And for us, we do really useful things also for public transport and so on, being useful. But I think you have to be useful, and you have to see or evaluate in which way you could be more useful. And if you govern just to govern and you cannot achieve anything, then don't do it. I mean, then it's just a harm for you, because then you lose credibility, and for a party, credibility is the most important thing.
So I think we'll return in a second to the question of who the right is and what explains the AfD's rise in recent years. But I wanted to briefly talk about some of the overall political economic context to some of the losses from the SPD and some of the problems in Germany. So Germany for a long time had maintained a lot of its manufacturing base. So at a time that in the US we were losing a lot of our jobs mostly to automation, partially to NAFTA. This is, when we're campaigning, we could say NAFTA, but mostly automation and other factors in the 90s. In Germany, there was a real concerted attempt to create a system that, in essence, suppressed wages, but was able to maintain manufacturing employment, maintain Germany's position as an exporter within Europe and beyond. And it seems like that model has just, suddenly gotten destroyed in the last few years. Obviously, there's been increasing energy prices and other things people blame for the uncompetitiveness. But I'm just wondering, what effect do you feel like this is having? Do you think that the right's rise and the SPD's fall is because of broader cultural problems? Do you think it's directly connected to these sorts of changes?
I think it's both. So you mentioned the model from the past. Germany's economy was based on, as people here would say, cheap energy from Russia. The defense paid by the people here. And then exporting all our beautiful cars everywhere and trying to cement this model. And the worst thing where you could see it was when the financial crisis hit here very hard. In Europe, there was a situation, a lot of countries in the south were hit very hard. And Germany, in a very brutal way, cemented its system, and the south of Europe was let alone. So they didn't help them. And that was also a big damage to the European idea, to tell this one. So now Germany is no longer, the economy is no longer increasing. Yeah. And we also have differences between regions. So most obvious thing that you would see on maps here is between East and West, but that is not the full picture. First, to explain the East and West thing, if you look at the election map right now, you would see that the borders of the former GDR are all blue. There are a few red dots, but it's mostly blue. Blue in Germany means, unfortunately, they all voted for the far-right AfD. Here you have to understand, in our proportional system, that doesn't mean a majority voted for them. It means the AfD came in strongest with around 30%. So even in East Germany, 2/3 of the people did not vote for the AfD. But still, it is a really high result. And this is also the area, if you would make the map for wages and for wealth and for such things, for employment, then you would see that East Germany is behind. I don't say this as an excuse. I excuse no one voting for a fascist party, but we have to have this in mind. I said it's not the full picture because right now we have other regions too, like Bremerhaven or Saarland in West Germany, that are doing also not so good. And we do have, on the other hand, regions in East Germany, like Leipzig, Halle, Rostock, not to talk about Berlin, where it's quite okay. So, but the general picture that you see is the AfD is strong where the people are economically not so well. So, and that is a problem we have to discuss, and that's also a problem we discussed very controversially among us. Because, as I said before, you don't want to excuse someone, but if you turn away from the problem and don't talk about it anymore, that's not helpful, because we want to win back everyone we can win back. Not a person who's really racist, that's a person we cannot win back. But if there's a person who is disappointed about the economical situation, maybe we can explain to them that their problem is not the migrant, but the billionaire, to make it very populist. And that is how we try to deal with the situation right now. I should mention one weird thing, that is the German, what's the Schuldenbremse? Thank you. The debt brake. When I was a member of the Berlin State Parliament, it drove me crazy because they made a decision in 2009 that Germany, the state of Germany, and the states, the federal states, are no longer allowed to go into a debt as much as they want to, because the constitution was changed that it's no longer allowed. And in the beginning it was no problem because we had a good economy and there was no problem. But then the war in then Corona happened, so we made Corona exceptions. Then the war in Ukraine, Russia invaded Ukraine, and there was another exception. But now they cannot invest So I don't want to talk too much about the US, but here the Biden government, as terrible they are, but they did a lot of investment with state, with taxpayers' money. Germany was not allowed to do it, which was really a self-organized problem that was totally unnecessary.
I mean, the U.S. gained around 800,000 manufacturing jobs at a time when Germany lost hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs. So that the default, if not for the deficit spending in some of the Biden administration's act, probably would have been maybe a reduction in those jobs. But again, yeah, I don't know why I just took 30 seconds out of our day to praise Joe Biden, but I do think it's worth maybe talking more about. I'll start with Sofia, but talking more about the base of the AfD. What are they? Who are these people, and how do we explain their politics as far as their mass base, but also the program of their leadership? So in other words, do we use fascist mostly to describe how unprecedented it is for a far-right force to rise in Germany? Do we actually think they have a fascist program as opposed to a right populist program, to the extent we could draw distinctions? But I was struck with a few things with their base, which was one, I don't know how accurate these polls are, but there was one poll of their likely voters months ago in the lead up to the US election, and they were split maybe 50-50 between Harris and Trump, which I just found surprising, and it might tell you about how awful our political situation is in the US. Also, there was other exit polls, and exit polls are very unreliable to begin with, and whatever exit polls I could access through Google Translate are also doubly unreliable, I'm sure. But there was exit polls among gay Germans, and it had surprising amounts of support. The party had surprising amounts of support among gay Germans, and obviously we could speculate about reasons why, but it did strike me that maybe there was a gap between the leadership and the base, both those suffering for economic reasons, but also there seemed to be more complication about even the social views of a party that obviously is very xenophobic, but might be more open to LGBT rights and more open to even nominally telling a pollster that they're going to support a black candidate in the U.S. Or they would in the abstract, or they would. I think the actual question was, would it be better for Germany, which might actually have more to do with tariff policies or things like that. But I'm wondering if you could talk about both, and I'm also curious to your thoughts about both the leadership and the base of this new right.
Okay, that was not only one question. Okay, let me start a bit for myself. The character of the AfD changed through the years. It was founded as an anti-European, anti-Euro project, like being against the European Union, the euro as a currency, and then really quickly it turned more right, and it became more anti-migrant party. And now the anti-migrant position, the racist positions they have, which are, as I said, also in many parts against the constitution of Germany. And now they even had it in the election program, the remigration word, which is code for that deportation of millions of people. Was for the first time in their electoral program, but they had bills before also in Bundestag, like wanting this remigration. So they turned really right, and they have one. He's not party leader. He has only the function of being in Thuringia. The leader of AfD Thuringia. Björn Höcke, who was even a court said that you could call him a fascist because his positions are really clear fascist positions, which means They are anti-Semitic. They are racist. Their aim is to make an ethnic cleansing of Germany by deporting people who have foreign ancestors. And even if they have German passport, German nationality, they are not acknowledged as being real Germans. They say that they tell them past Germans. These are the fascist elements of the AfD, and they are 10,000 people. So they are not a small amount of party members of AfD. They are a huge amount, and they dominate the program, the decisions which are taken in AfD. And Alice Weidel, who was the candidate now for chancellor, she's also lesbian living in Switzerland. She used that remigration word also in her speeches, and she's riding on that wave, let's say, and that's their strategy. It's strategic racism, and the AfD also has more functions than on the programmatic base, let's say. They are also the organizational center of the far right of Germany, and also they have many connections to far-right think tanks, to far-right money givers, to far-right the identity movement, which is like a fascist like movement or organization on the streets of fascists. It's a youth movement, a fascist youth movement, who has strong connections to Austria, to France, to even to the far right of US. So they are really good connected. They have a lot of financing, and the AfD is the center. They have employees of these far right fascist movements who even have been tried being violencing leftist people, hunting leftist people. In that meeting which was in Potsdam, which was published last year, there were employees and parliamentarians of the AfD in the Bundestag who are being tried, hunting people through fascist actions, and making even being documented far-right violent people. And the topic they were talking there was also using media and violence against left people. So it's a whole strategy, and also the AfD. They are the workers' people, so the Workers' Party. The first party which is voted by workers is the AfD. Then comes the left in that election now. Also among trade unions members, AfD has a higher percentage than in average of elections. This is the real problem Stefan also mentioned. The working class members vote AfD for social reasons. There was a survey just a couple of weeks before the elections that when the rents increased for €1, the percentage of voting for AfD increases 4%. So social injustice or social security matters rely to the support of AfD, but this is not the only reason. Like surveys which are taken for many years say that there is a fascist base, a racist base, an anti-feminist base, an anti-social or social Darwinist base in Germany. So they got a voice now with the AfD.
May I add one thing? What is really horrible is that the economic ideas of the AfD are totally against the interest of the people who are voting for them. So they are against unionization. They are in favor of corporations. I mean, you know all this from here. But it's so sad that people are voting for a party that if this party would govern, would make the situation even worse. And I want to add another thing. I read here in some analysis on the progressive side about the German elections. It is good that Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, who gave a speech in Munich, which was a de facto support for the AfD, it is good that they didn't succeed because the AfD, 80% voted against the AfD. I think that is a wrong perception. I mean, it makes us feel happy here that Elon Musk and Donald Trump just got 20% and 80% would vote against them, but that's just wrong. So I think the horrible thing is that this party was doubled and that we have now, I don't want to put the CDU together with the AfD, really not, because the CDU is not even like the Republican Party. We have liberal members in the CDU, it's a different party. But still, the CDU, CSU and the AfD, they do have a majority in the German Bundestag now. They don't govern together because there's a so-called firewall and the CDU is still saying they don't want to form a government with the AfD. But there are more and more members in the CDU who would say, let's burn down this firewall. And that is a real risk. And that also opens up a question, and a very complicated question that Bhaskar really touched a bit on, is what is a good strategy from a left socialist party? So how do we prevent for the next election, when maybe the CDU is open for a government with the AfD, to get them in power? So the only other majority would be a middle left majority. But the situation between Green Party, Social Democratic Party and Left Party right now is not that we are short before forming a coalition, to put it mildly. So it's what I'm describing here is we got away with, in Germany we say we got away with a blue eye. I don't know how you say it in English.
Definitely not that.
No, it means I'm sorry, David. So what I want to say is we got a little bit lucky with this election, so that we don't have this, but I don't think we are safe. So a CDU, AfD government may start in one eastern state in the next years, and then who knows what happens. So we have to discuss this question.
So we made a big strategic blunder in that we started with the optimism. We were talking about Die Linke and apps to fight landlords and everything else. Then we ended talking about the much greater successes on the German right. So if we could do it again, maybe we'd flip it around. But I do think we have a few minutes for Q&A. And I don't think, do we need to pass around a mic? Are we going to? Or okay. Okay, we're gonna wait. I'll filibuster.
Yes.
But I do think it's worth noting. So we mentioned in general some of these shifts that are happening among the voting bloc of these particular groups, and particularly among working class voters. Oh, there we go. Save me. I was going to talk about the experience of Die Linke in some of these eastern states that are now voting for the AfD, but we have better questions, I think.
Thanks. I heard reporting that there was a lot of young voters voting for the AfD, and I was wondering if you could talk more about what the appeal for young voters is to that party.
They are voting for the left.
So
actually, the left was the first party. We got 27% of the votes of young people below 27 age of 27. So we were really successful because of the social media work, I think. But also the AfD succeeds because of their social media work. And that young people want to, like there were some surveys and they were asked why I voting for AfD. And the answer was, we want a quick change. So AfD promises kind of quick change, and yeah, some of them believe that it would be in their interest. And also the Greens lost among young people. They were strong in the elections before because climate change was not a topic at all. So this is, it's a kind of pity that it wasn't a topic, but it was like covered by this migration topic.
If you look more regional, in the East, unfortunately, and among the male youth, the AfD was strong. So the young women got us this beautiful result, but we have some areas, and if you would go like if you would walk around in rural East Germany, the right-wing fascist youth culture is totally dominant. And that is where the AfD is strong among the youth too.
Since before you mentioned that the old base of the SPD was largely men employed in industrial work and so on, I always find it interesting that today when we talk about gender polarization of politics, we're always talking about women, particularly younger women, being stalwarts of the left, and men, particularly younger men, voting for the right. But traditionally in 20th century Europe, it was kind of the opposite. And as suffrage was expanded to women, I guess the kind of quick explanation was that a lot of the men were socialized in trade unions and in other forms of politics that were associated with the left. Obviously, this is a huge, broad generalization, but a lot of women were more drawn to Christian democracy or other parties that were socialized through churches and other civil society groups that were on the right. So a lot of the fear was that as suffrage expanded, the left would have trouble with this new voting bloc. And a couple generations later, we find that it's much the opposite. The jobs have gone, society has become more secular and progressive in many ways, and we're left with just the mostly feminized voting bloc. Why don't we take 2-3 questions at once? Is that
Hello, my name is José Ricardo Muñoz López. I am ex-prisoner politic the Régimen Ortega Murillo of Nicaragua. I activist the opposition of Nicaragua. My question is, what are the actions they will take to win the German presidential election? What are the actions they will take to win the German presidential election?
The formation of government.
¿Qué quiere decir? No, dímelo en español. Yo te lo sé.
¿Cuáles son las acciones que harán para ganar las elecciones presidenciales de Alemania?
Pero ellos ya hicieron las elecciones. Okay, you just wanted to know. You understood? Yes. Oh, okay. what action it would take to win the election in Germany? But I'm just telling him that you guys already had an election. So, well, you could just say that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ellos tuvieron la elección.
Sí. O sea, ¿cuáles son las nuevas acciones que impulsarán el nuevo gobierno?
Porque tú estás hablando de trabajar juntos y quiero. Okay, yes. You see, your German chancellor is supposed to work with the other party to form a coalition. So right there, he's asking, what are the actions that you guys need to take for those coalitions to get together?
So we'll answer. Let's take a couple more questions, but with the questions about the formation of the new government post-election and what kind of coalitions we'll see. So go ahead.
Thanks to you, the panel. The classic fascist ploy is to co-opt leftist ideas and combine it with reactionary social response. So in this case, taking left ideas and then blaming immigrants, for example, migrants, for the economic situation. So my question is really around the unionization or the union movement that exists in Germany, its social reaction, and the degree to which union movement has decreased or has receded with the onslaught of neoliberalism, and whether you see this reactionary response by unionised workers as a response to a collapse of unionisation, or whether there is another process occurring. Thank you.
Let's take just one more, and I'll. Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to raise the point that in this great success for Die Linke, most of your new voters, almost all of them, came straight from the Greens or SPD. So there is a danger of everyone fighting over a shrinking slice of the pie. And Stefan, if you're talking about the need for a left coalition in the future, I mean, it's getting smaller and you're just fighting between yourselves still. Or that's the danger.
Okay, so do you want to kick us off, or Sophie, do you want to start? Yeah.
If I understand you right, the question was how could the left enter into the government? Because there's no presidential election.
No, I think the question was more just what's a likely coalition. So, for example, will it be CDU, SPD?
Yeah.
Will it incorporate a third party?
There's only one possibility to build a majority in Bundestag without the far-right AfD, and that would be a coalition of the Conservative Party together with the Social Democrat Party. So the Social Democrat Party until now was having the Chancellor, and now they will be the minor partner because the Conservative Party is stronger than the Social Democrat. So they will go together.
Is there a chance of the Greens entering coalition? Even I know that it's not required mathematically, but that the leadership of the Greens wouldn't accept joining government again.
The Greens are in a really deep crisis now because the leader resigned, one of the leaders, and he was the most famous person. He resigned. They have to sort themselves, I think, and there's also no majority with the Greens. And I think, yes. Yes,
but he decided to step down as a.
But also the CSU, which is part of the Conservative Union, they decided even not to go together with the Green Party. So none of them, either the Greens nor the Conservative Party, wants to make a coalition. It will be a coalition with the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, which became more right in the past years. So it will be kind of difficult for the Social Democratic Party. They will be forced to become more conservative also. And they lost a lot of votes in this election, like 1.7 million votes to the Conservative Party. So I think the government of Germany will make a shift to the right.
Okay, I would talk about the unionization and about the voter blocks. The German union system is very different. So we are organized by sectors. They are not like more left-wing, more middle, and more conservative unions. There are the metal workers and the public service workers. And you are right, the member numbers went down during the whole neoliberal time. But we still have strong unions, and unions have more rights than here in this country. And sometimes they are even in the boards and make decisions. But they are also incorporated in the whole German system. So they are not very political. They don't go out and would do a political strike. They are not even allowed to do so, or a general strike. They just, it's not unimportant. They strike for higher wages and the working conditions. But this is mostly the things they are caring about. And before an election, if they are brave, then they would make a statement, don't vote for the AfD, but that's all. Most union leaders are Social Democrats, so traditionally they are all connected with the Social Democratic Party, but obviously that doesn't mean that the Social Democratic Party is strong. But in our system, I'm a union member, and of course I'm always in favor of strengthening the unions. But they are not the political force they could be. This is how I would describe it. Regarding the voter blocks, there's a little group that I would like to add here. So if you look at the city of Berlin, there was a huge surprise that we did win a district the district of Neukölln. So this district in West Berlin, we never ever did win a district in the west of Germany, and Ferhat Kotschak did win with a huge success. And he mostly did win voters who did not vote before. So like we not only have voters that we got from the SPD and from the Greens, especially among migrant German citizens, because only they can vote. Among them, we could win people over who did not vote before. But you are right, on the long run right now, the middle left bloc that used to be like 10 years ago close to a majority in the German Bundestag, we are far away from that. So in the end, of course, we need more votes. My recipe would be to do whatever we can to change the political discourse away from the migration question. So I think if we go to the economic question, then we can win more voters who are now in the other camps. If we are stuck in this migration debate, which is also fueled by the media because you get high rates when if people talk about migration. And unfortunately, we did have these horrible stabbings. You may have read about it. And with every of these things, the media debate starts again. So I think if we can move the debate back to the more important question of economy, then I think we have the chance to win over voters who are now in the CDU, FDP camp.
So let's do one very quick final round. Raise your hand. So I know you two have been waiting in the back. Sorry. So we'll do 3 final questions and then we'll wrap up. So, yeah. There.
What I'm hearing is a lot of tactical decisions being made, and I think that's certainly important. I think you have to deal with the politics which is given. You're dealing in this. I hear your conversation, and it has some elements like in the U.S., but some which are not the same. It seems to me what I'm not hearing is a strategic vision, and particularly from a socialist point of view. That seems to me that we're dealing with a notion of the economic structure which is last year. This year we're dealing with climate change, which is real. We're also dealing with more productivity than we need. We can produce more stuff than we need for the entire world in a small part of the world, which means different regions are competing in their economies to be the ones who produce this stuff. Cars, take in Germany, for example. Seems to me we need to begin to create a new vision, a new conversation, and not have it just embedded in the same kind of metrics and notions of how the economy is structured in the past. I'm not hearing the future. I'm hearing the past. I'm hearing let's meet them where they, it's important, but I'm not hearing what is your future vision.
Let's do one question there, then someone.
Hallo, erstmal mein Glückwunsch zum Wahlerfolg. Ich habe mich sehr gefreut. And my question is, you talked about migration being the dominant topic within public discourse, and with the SPD accommodating some of the policy points of the AfD and the Greens as well. How do you feel can we change this within the public discourse? How can we change migration being the top topic within public discourse? Because when you looked at political debates during the election period, basically every debate, 30 minutes, first 30 minutes, migration, national safety, yada, yada, yada. How do you feel can we change this public discourse?
Yeah, I was just listening this week, last week, no, today's what, Wednesday, on Monday, about an analysis about your election. And one of the host was talking about that in Germany, is talking about, some people are talking about seceding and having their own, to separate the country how it was before. And I wanted to know if there is any talk in Germany about that, and how these people on the East will survive, because the West is the one that has the money, and what kind of industry they will have there. But that's what they mentioned, because how the result of the election, how the far right, most of the votes from the far right came from the East. So, thank you.
Okay, so I know we have some other questions. We will be sticking around for a little bit. We'll stay here for reception for a little bit while longer. So the first question was more about the vision of the future, the vision of social strategy, and kind of a new economy, a new era. A second question, I think, gets at a point which is very important, which is it's kind of easy to say we want our issues to be more salient and their issues to be less salient, but I think that actually maybe elides the question of how to do it. And the last question is, should Germany or will Germany go back to, I don't know, the Holy Roman Empire or something? But let's let Sofia go last. So why don't you kick off?
Maybe I start with the last question, because I was born in East Germany and grew up in the GDR. And there is a sentiment on both sides. If people are very angry, then they would say, let's rebuild the wall, let's build it as double as high as it was before. But I tell you, no one would really do it. Even the people in the GDR who are complaining about the reunification, and they have good reasons. A lot of things are really bad. If East German, you would find only a very small number of East Germans in important positions, like being an ambassador or professor or whatever. They have good reasons to complain. But if you would ask them, do you really want to go back where you have to wait 10 years until you get your beautiful Trabant, which was a funny car that I drove in the GDR, or that you can just travel to beautiful Czechoslovakia? We couldn't not even travel to Poland anymore. The border to Poland was closed after Solidarność union started. No one would go back. They say this, but no one would go back. You will find people in West Germany who would say, we are paying there's an extra tax that is called Solidaritätsbeitrag. It was invented after the reunification, like an extra tax that you pay for the reunification. And some West Germans think they just pay it and no one else. The East Germans pay it too. And it's no longer for reunification. But it gives the feeling of, we are paying for these terrible East Germans, and then they are voting for AfD. I tell you, in the end, no one would really do it. So it's just talking. The strategy question I would take, and maybe you take the question about.
I will find something.
Maybe you do the next, and then I will say.
You talked about economy and overproduction. Yes, there is overproduction, and it leads to crisis also. There is a crisis in the automotive sector in Germany because they understand that they were too slow to go to electric motors, like electrification of individual transport. They are kind of behind, but also it's too much, and we as the left, we say we should reduce the production capacity and like emphasize more on public transport and not so much on individual transport. But there are processes of also changing industrial production, decarbonizing industrial production. There are things going on, but they are too slowly, also in economy. And what we did in this election campaign was to make a clear class contradiction. This was our main picture of politics, like being, like having the billionaires as being our opponent, being a class party. So. Our party leader, his first, when he introduced himself in the speech where he was to be elected, he said, I am Jan, and my opinion is we should not have billionaires. We translated that in easier pictures than overproduction and car industry, because this is kind of complex. We made it a bit more easier, so it was more understandable to emphasize on the economic waste of billionaires going or having yachts and using private airplanes and so on. So it was kind of a reduced picture. How to change the discourse? It is a very important question. I think because we had a couple of stabbings, Messerstechereien, stabbings. Like there were 3 stabbings in the past months in Germany, which were committed by Islamist. They were Islamist attacks, and also they were migrants, refugees. And also they had some psychological issues. And the far right and the Conservative Party used that stabbings to radicalize the political debate and changing that to a general anti-migrant debate, although also the victims of that stabbings were migrant people also. And we have more than 30%, more than 30% of the, more than 20 million people in Germany have migrant ancestors. So I think they overdid it a bit. So our message, not to generalize and make it anti-migrant debate, but seeing the individual, I think that worked a bit, and there was the clear strategy not to talk too much about migration, but addressing that issue and the debate of the Conservative and the far-right party by naming it as scapegoating. Like they use that stabbings, for example, scapegoating all of the migrants, like making migrants, giving them the responsibility for this happening, which doesn't work, and many people understand it doesn't work. So we argued on a different level, but I think you cannot ignore that debates in general. You have to go against also as a left party.
And since we want to have a positive tone at the end, optimism, I will bring one example that was really successful to change the discourse. That was the housing question. Yeah. In the city of Berlin, which is really crazy, and the capital of Germany, the left party became the strongest, and in both parts of Berlin, east and west. And I think one important reason is that in Berlin, our party is seen as a party that is fighting for lower rents, for lower housing prices. And that was not just a campaign thing, it has a long backstory. So we used to be part of the government in Berlin. And the Minister for Housing was a woman from our party. And she organized a rent break so that people could see that their landlords are not allowed to increase the rents anymore because of us. Rent cap. Rent cap. And after we've been out of the government, the next government just ended this, and the rents were increased. So everyone could see this party is actually doing something. And we organized, not us, but together with a movement, a referendum for expropriation of big housing companies. And this referendum got a majority. I mean, in the end, the next government didn't fulfill what the people wanted with this referendum. But I think you can change the discourse if you talk about a topic that is of interest of a majority too, like migration, and you can deliver something. They believe you that you can deliver something for their life, and so in the end we did win 4 districts and we became the strongest party in Berlin. And what I'm saying here is I think it is possible to change the discourse.
If you allow me to add something. In Bremen we have the best result of the left party in Western Germany, except of Neukölln. But on the federal level, we are the federal state with the best result, with almost 15%. So we did really strong. And I think that's also the reason of the left being in general successful and having this good campaign. but also we emphasize on housing a lot. What we did is we brought to decision in January, like the month before election, and it was our initiative as the Left Party of Bremen, to have social housing quotas in rich neighborhoods. The quota of social housing will be up to 60%, and in more poor neighborhoods, the percentage will be lower, to have the kind of social mixture of the city and not have this social division, which is very typical for German cities, that you have a huge ethnic and social division of neighborhoods. And we want to go against that, and we brought that to decision with a bill, and it was decided in January, and people really acknowledge that. So I think going together on that campaign of the national level of the left, having housing like the topic number one, and on the federal level also backing that strategy with emphasizing on housing issues was really successful and useful.
Well, thank you so much for coming all the way here. Thank you to the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung for arranging this event. As you can see, there's many glasses of wine poured, about as many as there are people here, so please grab one. Also, one of the benefits of doing an event with the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung compared to Jacobin, where we're always trying to nickel and dime you, is the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung can't take any money for program services. They're funded just by the German taxpayers. So everything is free downstairs. There's copies of Jacobin, I believe, that are free, and there's wine and food. So please stick around and come up and talk. This is Sofia's first time in New York City, so if you don't want to talk about politics, you could offer suggestions of places to go and things to see. But thanks.
And thank you, Bhaskar.